So today we're going to get started on using Django as a full stack framework. So we're going to be handling both front end and the back end of our application through Django. Later on, when we learn React, we're going to be using Django just as the API or the backend, and then it will be used in conjunction with React as the front end tool. So the project that we're going to be working on today is we're going to be building a simple polling app. So you have questions, you vote on a question, and then you can see results of the polls. This tutorial is pretty largely based off of the original docs of Django. They have a pretty good tutorial there, but we edited the tutorial because they use databases straight away, and we're not going to learn about that until Wednesday. So yeah, I would definitely recommend going through that app once we finish our talking about databases and stuff like that. But okay, let's start a new terminal. And like I've mentioned, these steps will kind of become a little repetitive because we have, it's just the same steps of setting up a project over and over. So we will see these a lot. If you want to write them all down, there's some steps today.
You want to share your screen?
Oh, I wasn't. Thank you. Okay, hold on, actually.
I can see it.
I can see it as well.
I can see it.
Okay. You see here like Django projects and apps. Let's VS Code. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Is it just so I'm the only one that's not seeing the screen?
I guess so. Check your settings, like the display settings for Zoom. Oh, it is probably on another desktop, maybe. Zach was saying. I don't know. Hope it gets figured out. Okay. So what do we have to start before we start a project? What do we have to do first?
Virtual environment.
Yes. So I'm going to create a virtual environment. For me, I'm going to start holding all my virtual environments in just a folder off of my users folder. So it's just an easier way for me to keep track of all of them. You guys can put it wherever you want. So I'm gonna put it in vent, and I'm gonna call it polls environment. And then you have to remember that you're using Python 3. All right, so now I'm going to activate it. So source, I'm gonna find the path for it, and then bin activate. There we go. So now we know that our virtual environment is on. So can someone remind me what do we do next? So we've activated our virtual environment.
Download Django.
Say it again.
I think
Django on the VM
Install Django. Yeah.
on the virtual machine.
Yeah. So the virtual machine is on. We can see from here. Let me actually make it a little bigger. Okay. So we're going to do pip install Django. That will do our installation. And then after that, we can start a project. So Python -m Django. Start project. And for this project, I'm gonna just call it polls project. Okay, that seems correct. Okay, so let's see what got created. Polls project, and within it, there's the main module, and we didn't go over in detail what these all mean. So our manage.py is basically the code that allows us to use our terminal to interact with this application. So it allows us to start the server, make migrations, which we'll learn more about that when we're working with databases, and like load up predefined data and stuff like that. So that's just our main entry point pretty much through the terminal. We also have, so this init.py is just an empty file that tells Python that this is a directory that should be considered a Python module. So this is just, you don't have to worry about it. It's just there to run, to make sure that Django runs this project properly. The settings, these are the settings and configurations for the project. And here we will configure our database. We will add apps that we create. We'll touch this today. So we'll see where we actually add stuff. And what else? The urls.py, it's the file where we're going to declare our routes. So we'll also touch this today. This one, the whiskey.py, according to the docs, it's an entry point for whiskey compatible application servers. It's, so in our own words, it's just what we need to make sure the app fires up on different servers. So this will be used during deployment. So you don't need to worry about it and don't touch it. We just leave it as it is. Okay, so now we can do run server. So manage.py, run server, and this should not give us any issues. What did I? Oh, okay. So I'm not in the folder, so I don't have access to manage.py, which makes sense. So I'm just gonna clear this. Here now I'm gonna say cp project, and in here I can do Python manage.py run server. Okay. And these migrations are attached to database stuff, so we will learn how to handle this soon. Okay, so now if I go to localhost 8000, I see the base application. Okay. So Django projects are typically split into multiple apps. So one project can have many apps. So imagine a new project at Amazon where they're selling a lot of space on the moon. That project requires a bunch of different apps to run. For example, there could be a billing app to collect money, a searching app for people to look up lots, a VIP app where they target VIPs and then sell them certain things. So you try to put certain types of functionality into its own app, which when we're working on these now, we probably won't have to create more than one because our apps are so small, or our projects are so small.
Zainab?
Sorry?
Oh, I was gonna say, they brought up a good point in the chat. I was wondering too, do we need some requirements?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
So make sure that you're in your polls project, the main folder, and then here I'm gonna do not Python, it's pip freeze requirements.txt. There we go. So we've created our requirements. Oh. So what did I do wrong here? If anyone can tell. So I made it earlier. I was working on this terminal, but I had it busy, so I opened a new one. Exactly, I'm not in the virtual environment. Yep, I forgot to turn it on. So these are all the libraries that I have on my local Python distribution, which is why we separate these out. So I'm just gonna do it from here because I already have it on. Okay. I'm gonna do pip freeze. Okay. Now it's the proper one. Okay, so now I'm gonna start a new project, a new app for this project. And to do that, let me just make this a little bigger. So we're gonna type Python -m Django. And we're gonna call start app, sorry. Start app, and then we're gonna give it the name Pulse app.
Does this need to be in the virtual environment as well?
Yes, and here we are in the virtual environment. Yeah, so anytime you're interacting with your project, it should be inside the virtual environment. Okay, so let's see what happened after I called start app. So just note that before we called start project, which created our project, and then this one is our start app. So this is the project folder that was already there, and this is our new folder that was created. So in here, we have a folder for migrations. We'll worry about that when we work with the database. Same here, there's an init file, which is also empty. There is an admin.py where you can add certain modules here. We won't really be working with this much. And then you have different folders, apps. Don't really need to work with this one either. This is just an automated, like one that gets created automatically. Most of our work is going to be in models.py. This is where we create our data models. That is also when we work with databases. This is going to be our main file that we start off with. And then we also have our views. Views is where we are going to hold the information that
Hey,
remember-
Zia, sorry, did you start when you said start app, did you say start app polls project?
I called it polls app. So similar to start project, like that command.
Yep.
You have to just give it a name. So I gave it the name of polls app. So we know, so we can see the distinction between the project and the app. It's just a little easier with the naming.
Got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
understood.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Okay, so first things after we create this application, we have to go into our polls project settings. So we go into the settings here, and then we have to find installed apps. And we need to append our newly created apps, the app that we just created. So we're gonna just call it polls app. And so this makes it accessible through the big project. So if you're, I'll actually demonstrate what happens when you don't have it in there and how you can tell that you don't have it in there. If you run into a bug where you program the route to do something and nothing is showing up. It's usually that you don't have this in the installed apps. Okay. So yeah, let's, this is done. We have created we have bound this app to this project. And now we can go into the views.py inside of our app. So this file usually holds the request handlers that we wrote last time. So remember we wrote, like I'm gonna write an index one right now, and this takes in a request. And then we're going to return, I need to pull it up. So from Django.http, import HTTP response. Okay, so we're going to write a response just saying, hello there. Here. Let's see. Polls index. Okay, so I did this. What else do I need to make this visible from the browser?
You have to call it using the path.
Mhm. So we need to configure our URLs, right? So we have a project's URLs file, file, and this will contain everything for the project. And so what we're going to do today that is a little different, we are going to create another urls.py inside of our app. So I'm going to just create urls.py. I'm going to import so from Django.shortcuts. Import render. So this you can just copy over from the other urls.py. So actually, no. Wait, why am I? Oh, sorry, I copied the wrong thing. Okay. So from this one, you're only importing path, which we will use to define that this is a path. So from Django.urls, import path. And what this looks like here is URL patterns equals, and then it's a list. So then here we define our paths. So we are going to want a home path. So just our URL as it is without any extra added paths. And then we are going to import the function that we just wrote that handles this information. So this is going to be in views. So from dot import views, and from dot, it just means from here, from this folder, import views. So then here I can say views dot index, because that's what I called it. Okay, so this is the function that I want to be called when we are at the base route. And again, even though it's a function, I don't put the parentheses because I'm not going to execute the function when this line is being executed. Rather, I want to set a path that will execute this function whenever this is called. So I don't want to call it immediately. I want it to be delayed pretty much. Okay. So now we have created urls.py that will handle our app paths. So if we had multiple apps, each app would contain its own paths. And then we will go to the project urls.py. And in here, I'm just going to delete all of this information because it's a little busy. So in here, what we're going to write is we're going to add include here. So this include method will allow us to include a previously defined URLs. Like it just pretty much takes this stuff in here and adds it to be accessible from here. So I'm going to say path. So if I wanted to have a specific path for a polls app versus a different app that we create, I can specify a certain path here. So I can say, if a person goes to /polls, then it will take them to the base of this. But I'm not going to add that level of abstraction right now. I'm just going to keep it to the base. So whenever we visit that site, just localhost port 8000, it will automatically go to these defined ones. So I'm going to include, and then we're going to send it in as a string, and it's going to be polls app dot URLs. And then the URLs is this module pretty much. Yeah, so we include the module. We have, so what happens when we go to localhost 8000? It will go to this file first, the project folder file. It will look for whatever matches that the path pattern, and then it will handle it. So here, because it's the base, it's going to go to include this. So it's going to go to these ones, and then it's going to look for one that matches it. And it should print out what we want it to print out. It would help if I start the project right. Manage.py, run the server. Okay, now it's running. And now, there we go. So we get our main, our index return here, our response. So what would have happened if I put polls here?
You had to put polls in the URL to be able to see anything.
Exactly. So here I haven't defined anything for the main route. So I would have to say polls, and I'm at the index. So pretty much this takes off one layer. So if I get to polls, this is now the base of it. So that's why when I went here, it was taking this as the index, because after polls, there's nothing. But if I added something else here, I don't know. So that is not defined in here. So if I add it here, there we go. Now it's visible again. Okay, one last thing I want to demonstrate, and then we can ask some questions. So like I was saying earlier, what happens when we don't have our app in our settings? I'm going to save. This should be just accessible polls now. Okay, if I go to slash. Oh, I think I had to rerun the server because it's running already based on. Yeah, so if you change anything in the settings, you have to rerun the server to actually see your or not. Hold on. Yeah, cache is stable. Okay, I'm trying to break it, but it's not breaking. I guess after the first time that you do it, it's recognizable then. Anyways, sometimes you define these routes, and then the main Django, like the like, hello, this is a Django project, welcome type screen that still shows up. So that's what I was going to say. Make sure that you have your polls app included in there. Okay, questions?
Does deactivating the what do you call it, the environment would show any changes?
I mean, I would have to stop the server to deactivate the environment, so that would show changes. And I wouldn't be able to start the server without the the virtual environment on because only the virtual environment has Django installed. I don't have it on my other machine, so
Oh, no, I was just asking if you deactivate it and reactivate it, would it change, show any changes if you comment out all apps?
with the change this? No, it shouldn't change it at all.
All right,
Because
thank
the environment is just taking care of Python stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, it shouldn't change. Other questions? Yeah, Kayla?
I think Luis's hand was up before mine. He can go.
Okay, Luis?
Yeah, can you like just really quick go through every step that you went real quick again?
Yeah, definitely. Do you mean like the steps to set up the project or the steps of how
Everything.
everything? Okay, yeah, definitely. Okay. So we started out just no folders, anything. I was just in the folder for my notes today. I created a virtual environment. I started my virtual environment. I installed Django, and then I ran the start project command. So I did Python-m Django. Also, instead of just doing this, there is I think a Django.admin that allows you to do like start server and start project. So
Can you clear the terminal because
yeah, it's
with the Zoom, the bottom part of the Zoom just can't see.
Thank you for telling me. Okay. Okay, so what I did was just Python-m Django and then start project. So this is the first step, and then I gave it a project name, which was polls project. And then after running this, I got a polls project folder and then a manage.py. I then did pip freeze for the requirements, and I ran, okay. So I created that, and then I went into this polls project, the bigger folder. So I just changed my directory into the polls project, which I'm in at the moment, as you see here. And this is where I can actually have access to the manage.py, so I can run my server. So when I'm inside of this folder, then I can run my start app. So Python-m Django start app, and then I called it polls app. You get the point. So I start my app, and then I get another folder that was created. So I had to do a few things to get everything set up. So first thing is I went into my settings of my polls project. I went into installed apps, and I added the app that I had just created to installed apps for this project. And all you have to do is just put the name of the app, and it'll automatically do its thing. So we did that, and then in polls app, I added a urls.py file. So in here, I imported path, and I also imported the views. So I imported the request handlers, the HTTP request handlers that I had previously written, and I set the path of the base path to that method. I should have mentioned this first. So I created a method that handles the base request. So when I first go there, I'm just gonna spit out hello there. I think this is better. Okay, you're at the polls index. And it will return it once we get to this path. So there's one more step after this. It's importing this entire file. So all the paths that we will set here, we want to import them into the project paths. So here I set polls as my URL here, or like the part of the URL that I want to specify that this is going to the polls app. But actually I can just keep it to the base. So when I want to go to my website, I don't have to say /polls immediately. I can just go to localhost 8000. I have to turn on my my server. So Python manage.py and then run server. So my server is running. I refresh and here we go. We get our request handled.
Xana, can you go back one more, or can you go back a step, just back 30 seconds ago, because you showed, I think you were talking about the views. Are we in the views? We're not in views yet.
This is the views. This is
That's
where
response. Okay, I see that. And I have that, but all weekend long, I've gotten an error and don't really know how to troubleshoot the error window.
what was the error?
Well, the error is, 1 second, please. It says page not found, polls / current path doesn't match any of these. And I have followed these instructions several times and continue to get this trouble.
So what is the path up here?
127.00.8000 / polls.
Okay, and what are the ones defined in there when it says like only these are defined? Is it just admin?
Okay. Yes, I got it here now. I see it now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
so yeah, that happens when you don't have this one configured.
Okay.
Louis, was that like, did that kind of,
Yes, that was definitely helpful. Thank you.
okay, awesome. Kayla?
Oh, that pretty much answered a lot of what I had questions about. And I just wanted to make sure, so for any app that we create, like any app folder, we also have to add a new urls.py and then link to the project.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if I added a new app in here, I would have to put another line in here, including that specific app's URLs.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what, I hate to ask this, but why are we creating the apps folder alongside the project folder?
That is a Django thing. That is a specific convention that Django likes to follow because I don't know, they chose this structure and
Oh, okay, so it's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
See, a minute ago, you were describing the relationship between all these without necessarily talking about the code. One more time, can you tell how all these things relate to each other and what happens at startup?
For like here, this stuff?
Well, you
Or-
were talking about how one,
like this file indicates that the project is a module, a Python module. And this one also makes this polls app a Python module. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like how
yes.
this information?
Again, I thought a minute or two ago you were describing the logic of how one thing retrieves a section of how the URLs relate to each other for the project and the app. And
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah. So the project URLs are going to be kind of like your main directory. So if we don't need our admin site, we don't have to keep it here, but you're gonna only have a few paths, and these are going to be the base paths for your apps. So for my polls app, I just said whatever is on the base path, just include all of my URLs for this polls app. So if I go into my polls app, whatever I define here, that will be attached to my polls app, I can pull views from here. So I can create views and I can display what I want based on not this folder, but the other one. So this is my projects. This is my apps urls.py. It is a little confusing to work with all of all these layers of files. This is a Django specific thing that takes a little time to get used to, but the reason, or what at least they said, the reason behind doing this is to end up with a project that is organized in a way that makes it easier to work with. Did that answer your question? Or not? Not really. I kind of just talked about this one. It'll make more sense. We'll go more in depth. Luigi.
Oh, just a quick recap. You created the URLs .py, right?
I
Or
did.
it came with the migration?
So one of them came with the project folder,
Mhm.
but for each app, I have to create my own.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So this one I created, this one was included. And here, this is the app, this is a project. Louis?
Yeah, I got a question. So when you created the polls app,
Mhm.
how come it didn't include the URLs and settings and stuff like that? Didn't you do exactly the same thing?
So it's not going to include the settings because the settings are only for the project. So it is a little odd that you have to create your own URLs. You also have to create your own template folder to hold your templates for HTML. That is a design choice that Django went with, and I guess they want to give you like the most bare bones project that you can start off with, and then you can add all the stuff. But especially with the URLs one, like that is their standard. Like you have to do that. I don't know. Yeah, this is Django's fault.
Okay. But my question was like, so did you use the same code to create the post app when you created the post project?
No, so there are two different commands. One is start project and the other is start app. So
Okay. I see the difference now.
Yeah, these are going
Okay.
to do different things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So start project creates a bigger project folder, and within it there's another project folder with the same name, and then the app is just going to create one folder here that has the app information. Yeah, Kenneth.
I just had a question in the beginning when we're setting up like the folder directories and stuff. For whatever reason, I somehow end up making like 3 different polls project like folders. And I'm not totally sure exactly where, I'm messing that up at.
You might have run the command a couple times when it was already created. So if you were in this like out here, you created a project. So this creates a polls project, and within it, there's a polls project folder again. And then if you were in here and then you created it, then you're going to get 2 more after that.
Okay.
So it's possible that you just ran the command a couple times.
Okay. So when we create, so I was trying to take the method in which you do it to where like you have a folder with all your virtual environments. Whenever we do that, do we create the polls project as its own directory, and then underneath that, the next one that we would make would just be polls app? Don't try to make another one called polls project again. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hopefully that makes
So
sense.
polls project is going to be just when we do start project, that will be our main project that we create. And then when we're inside of our project, when we're inside of this main project directory, we are going to call start app, and that will create our polls app. So we're making a distinction of the naming, just so we know that this one's an app and this one's a project.
Okay, so when we actually use the start project command, it will make that folder.
Yeah.
It doesn't, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was
So-
just like starting up the virtual environment and then. I
Oh,
have to
no,
name it
no.
again.
So yeah. So with when I did start project, it created everything that has polls project on it. And then when I did start app with my polls app, it created this polls app folder.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Luigi.
Yeah, when I created my the Pulse app, for
Mhm.
some reason my migration actually doesn't have the actual init py and admin and all that stuff. It's actually outside the migration folder.
So here,
If you
and
go
then
to Pulse app, yeah. For some reason, all the contents starting from the admin to the views, it's
okay.
actually outside the folder. I'm not sure how I did that.
So the succession of events is you do start project with your project, and then you cd your change directories into that project. So I created start project, polls project, right? And then after this, I say cd polls project, and then I do start app, and then I can say polls app.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's because we want our app to be inside of our project. We need to have it live in the top level directory. I know there's two of them. This is our main project directory, and that's where our app needs to live. Jim.
I have two questions. One of them was, did you intentionally in the project URLs remove the admin section?
And the project at URLs? No, I did not.
Okay,
I
so that's-
could. It won't change anything.
Well, it causes mine to bomb. I'll look at that. But then the next question is, what do we do? Which of these commands do we need to and not need to run again when we reinitialize the project? What if we shut this down?
Mhm.
Do
So
we just open up the app and click run server and we're good?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So your start project and start app, those are going to be run exactly once. So you create your project, you go into your project folder, you create your app, and then you do all the changes that you need to change, and then you can run your server and everything is fine. And then, like you said, if you're done with it, you can deactivate your virtual environment, close your computer. Next day, just turn on the environment again, and then you can run, you can start your app. So you can do.
So we do need to reinitialize the virtual environment before we start working on our project?
You don't need to reinitialize it, you need to activate it, because
Well,
you
okay.
created one, so you just need to activate it before you start on it.
Okay, so have it start running. And do we do that inside or outside of VS Code? Do we do the terminal window or the terminal window inside of VS Code, or are they exactly the same?
Whatever terminal window you're going to be using to call run server. So
and that command is source and virtual environment name bin activate.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. Louis?
Yeah, I got one more question. So earlier, when you were trying to run your server, it wasn't running, but like you did run it beforehand. So how come that deactivated the server? What you do to deactivate the server? 'Cause I feel
So
like
I had a server running here and I wanted to run a certain command on the server. Actually, it happened twice. So one of them was because I opened a new terminal and I didn't start my virtual environment. So because of that, I wasn't able to use
I was going to
Django
say,
to run the server. Well, hello, sorry, am I back?
Oh, we lost you for a second, Zainab. It
Okay.
froze.
Thank you. Am I back now? Am I good? Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so two things or two different types of things could happen. So either you're on this terminal, so this terminal has my virtual environment on. If I create a new terminal, your virtual environment is not activated on this terminal. So I would have to activate it again to be able to turn on the to run the server. So that's one possible thing, that you just didn't activate your virtual environment. Another thing is that if I was in, so this happened earlier. So I was in this big folder. So I was one level up and I was trying to run or use manage.py, and manage.py is inside of this folder and I was not in that folder. So that's why I couldn't access it. So I had to change my directories to my polls project, and then I can run manage.py run server, and it will run. Did that cover what you were looking for?
yeah. I just wanted to like make sure, because I feel like that could happen to me in the future and I don't want to
Yeah.
get stuck into it.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of like little nuances and debugging. Yeah, Jim.
I didn't intend to have my hand raised there, but I'm still having some troubles with when I have the admin line included in the project URLs line, just as you have it,
Mhm.
path open / comma, I get a failure and it says the name admin is not defined. So
Is
can you
this
tell us how
line-
to troubleshoot?
Is it possible you accidentally deleted this top line?
Path admin, and I suppose that's it. Yep, that's it.
Okay,
And
awesome.
so I guess the reason I'm asked, so I think I copied from the lecture notes quite directly, but that's it then, I get it.
Okay, yeah. Whenever you see that something is not defined, something that you're trying to use is not defined, look at the imports immediately. See if you're not importing what you're supposed to import. Yeah, Kayla.
Why do we get, I'm not sure if we already talked about this or maybe I missed it, but why do we get the yellow lines under our imports? Because it makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong.
No, the yellow lines are fine. This is just a Django thing, because I think Python is trying to interpret it, but I believe someone mentioned if you have an extension for Django specifically, that they will go away. Yeah, so it's just, these are completely fine. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just
Okay.
the interpretation of these files within the system.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions that I missed in the chat? I forgot to actually use the questions doc today, which is my bad. Anything I missed, or any other questions that you guys might have?
I have another quick one. Whenever we're creating things in a terminal and changing our directories around, I've noticed on VS Code, like to the left, if I started off in a certain file, it just doesn't populate. So if I'm in the virtual environment already, is there a quick way to, I guess, source control and find where I'm working at? I don't know if that makes sense.
What do you mean? Like where, in which folder you're working at, or what do you mean? Like if you do PWD, it'll give you the path of where you are in on your computer. Is that what you're asking, or?
Essentially, yeah. Robert actually put the chat there, and I will use that.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? All right. Okay, so now that we've set up our project, we are going to try to create a few new routes and views. So let's start in our app URLs. So here we still have our index one. So now I'm going to create a few more. So let's say we need so this is going to be a polls application. So we're going to probably need one that what's it called? That gives us question details. So let's say we want to take in a question ID. So we're gonna take in a parameter. It's going to be an integer as the question ID, and then I'm just gonna call it question ID. Okay, and then this is going to be question ID just slash. So whenever I put a question ID in at the top, it will be handled by a view, and let's call this detail. So this will give us the question detail. And this is not, has not been created yet. That's why it's not in blue yet. But that's okay. Okay, cool. Our server is stopped, so we won't get any errors. Then we're going to create one that allows us to view that question's results. So we can just also have the question ID be our first parameter, and then just slash results. And forward slash afterwards. And then this, we can handle it by something called results. And then I'm going to create one last one that will allow us to actually view the voting. So, or vote. We'll do it like that. And we're also going to be taking a question ID. And oops, this will be slash vote. So these are our three new paths. This will be handled by the views dot. Okay, so we created 3 new URLs. Let's go to our views and actually create functions to handle them. So we're gonna define 3 of them. We had detail. This is going to take request and then question ID, because we have, if you guys remember, we have a parameter that's coming in. So we're going to call it question ID. And then I'm just going to return something for now. Copy this. So detail, and then we have results, and then we have vote. So for now, for these pages, we'll just return just a string or like an HTTP response with a string. So HTTP response, and I can format this. So let's say, forgetting to escape the character. Okay. We're looking at question, and then we can put the question ID, just so we can print out, make sure that we have the information that we're pulling in. you're looking at the results of question, whatever it is. And for this one, we'll say you're voting on question with question ID. Okay, so now we've created these 3 routes. Let's run our server and test them out. My server is running. This was our main one. It's still the index. If I do /2, we're looking at question 2. If I say, what was the route again? It was question ID and then results, and then there's another one with vote. So question ID / results. You're looking at the results of question 2, and then for this one, vote. You are voting on question 2. Awesome. This was just very simple routes. Okay, so let's add some data. We don't really know how to work with databases yet, so we're just gonna have some built-in data. I'm gonna copy over one sec. So in here, I'm just gonna add my data in the form of a list of dictionaries up here. So I'll go over what the data is real quick. Latest question list. Okay. So this data I have, in this data, I have 2 questions here. Okay, so this outer shell is a question. So this is the question ID, question text, publication date, and then the choices that are attached to this question. And each choice has an ID, text, and how many votes have been given to it. And then same here. So this question also has ID, all that stuff, and the choices. So let's figure out rendering. Rendering is just what we're showing on the actual page. So there's something called server-side rendering. Does anyone know what server-side rendering is versus client-side rendering?
The work and construction of the page is done at the server.
Yep. And versus client-side rendering, it would be its own thing. So today we're going to do server-side rendering. So we're going to have this like dynamic information showing through the server, and then client-side is when we're working with React. That's pretty much the difference between the two. So most web applications that we're going to create need dynamic content. It's kind of boring if you just look at a website every time you visit it and it's the same information. It's just a page of static information. So that's why we need one of these rendering methods, just to be able to show updated data or just dynamic data of some sorts. And this data is usually like the application needs to get information from APIs or databases and stuff like that. So we can make this happen through one of these 2 options. Server-side rendering is generally faster for initial page load. Although it might take some time to load scripts and like below the fold images. So like later on loading is a little slower, but on first impression, like the first thing that loads, it's usually faster and you can see immediately. But so usually with things like React, routing is faster, and there's a lot of more complexity. So you don't have to choose one or the other. Usually with your applications, you can create like your login page that is server side, and then your client side is everything else or something like that. So both of them can be used at the same time, but you don't have to. You can choose one or the other. Okay, so to view data, today we're going to create templates using Django's templating system. So inside of our polls app, I'm going to create a folder called templates. Okay, so and in here, usually the convention is to create a folder with the same name as your application and then put whatever HTML files you want in there. You can do that. I honestly prefer not to, because it's just one level of folder that you don't really need. But you can. So I'll just demonstrate it this time. But you probably won't see that much unless you choose to do it as well. Okay, so inside of this polls app folder, I'm going to create an index.html. Okay, so this is like a normal HTML file, but the thing is, you have certain functionality. You have, we'll actually see what you can do with these. But yeah, I was going to copy over. So I'm just going to copy over comments. So HTML comments work, but there's also certain comments that are specific to these Django templates, which this is what a comment would look like. So you start off with like, it's kind of like an open tag and a closing tag. So you have comment and then end comment, and whatever you put in here is your actual comment. So that is one thing. Is a comment. Okay, so this is my index file. So I'm just going to have an all polls header. So another thing that you can do with these files is you can have an if statement. So to do anything special to these templates, this is typically how you see it. So you have a curly brace with % signs on each side. And then in here, you can write what you want to write. So I'm going to write an if statement saying, if latest question list. So what these templates are going to allow me to do is in here, in my view, I can actually, instead of sending back an HTTP response, I can use the render method that was already here. And I can render a template that I create, and I can also send it in data. So through my view, when it's handling the request, I can actually just call this HTML file, and then I can send it in data. And I'm going to assume that I'm going to send in the latest question list that I have in here. So first we check if there is a latest question list that was sent with us, or if it exists. And then within this, I'm going to create a list, an unordered list. Also, there are extensions that would help with developing like the Django HTML, because here, oh, I mean, I do have it, but it doesn't autocomplete your HTML tags, which is a little annoying sometimes. Okay, so we saw the comments, we saw an if statement. So another thing that we can actually do here is a for loop, which is very, very helpful. So I'm going to say for question in my latest question list. Okay. So for each one of these, I want to create a list item that has let's say for now that the question, no, I'm gonna create a link in here. So an A is an anchor tag, and that allows you to create a link if you haven't come across it yet. So href is going to be equal to, what am I gonna put? Did we keep the slash polls or no? We did not. Okay, so I'm just gonna do slash my question ID. Actually, okay, let's do it one step at a time. I feel like we're going too far. Okay, so inside of my list item, I am just going to display my question text. So if we look back at our data here, inside of latest question list, then we have like question, and then dot question text is going to be the actual text. So to be able to insert a variable, so similar to in Python when we're trying to insert a variable into a string, we usually denote this notation or using that notation. For here, it's two curly braces, and then we're gonna say question dot question text. I'm gonna close my tag, and I have to close my for loop. So this notation again is a special Django notation to that allows us to add more functionality to an HTML template. So this is part of their templating system. And to end the for loop, we just write end for, and this will say, okay, now this is the end of our for loop. Then we close this. And so we have an if statement. We might as well do an else. So we can just say else here, and then we can just print in a paragraph tag saying no polls are available. Okay. So just to reiterate on these things, oh, actually the comments, a comment could look like this, but there's also, oops, a comment like this. So that, yeah, there we go. So this is also a comment. Okay, so the thing that you have to remember usually, so anything with if and for, that's called a code block. So anything with the curly braces and then percent signs, this is going to be called a code block. Can be if, else, for. I don't remember the rest of them, but this is mainly, those are the main ones that we're going to see. If we have two curly braces within each other, this is a variable interpolation. So we're able to use variables within wherever we need them. So here I inserted it inside of a list item. And yeah, this is it. So the comments, code blocks, and then variable interpolation. I am going to comment these ones out right now just because, yeah, so.
How did the index get registered as a Django file?
It's because I have an extension.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So this one is.
What
like
is the extension?
It's Django HTML.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Django HTML. Yeah, I need a better one. That's why I didn't really push it this time. But I think like Django one has some good snippets. I don't know. I'll do some more digging, and if you guys find any good ones, please let me know. Okay, so what we did is we wrote an index.html that will handle taking in, a list from our backend, from our views, and it will then loop through these questions, and then it will create a list item for each one. And if there isn't anything in the list, we will just say no polls are available. Okay, so we've created this, but now we're not actually sending anything in. We're not calling anything. We're still sending it an HTTP response back. So let's first build our data. So our data is going to be equal to an object or a dictionary. And this will have a key. So we have to give, so this is generally how you structure things. So you just have to give it a key and then a value, and then your key can be used in here. So since I'm using this key, latest question list, that means that key has to be in here as well. So I'm going to call this latest question list, and then I'm going to send in the actual latest question list, the list that was predefined over here. Okay, so I create that, and now instead of my HTTP response, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to render. So the render takes in the request that was sent in. So request is the first parameter, and then we're going to tell it where our index is. So ours is going to be inside polls app index. So whenever you're calling render, it automatically goes to a template folder. So you don't have to say that it's inside of a template folder. You just have to give it from the template folder, where does it go? So for me, I'm going to say polls app, which is this folder, and then slash index.html. Okay. And then our last parameter here, which is not usually required, but if you have data, then you put in your data over here. So instead of doing this, I could have also just had this part here instead of the data, but this makes it a little easier, so you don't have a really long line on this return. Okay. So what I'm expecting is that I go to the index, it takes the data, it renders my index.html template that I wrote with the data sent in, and I should be able to see a list of my questions. So let's go to our base. Okay. What did I do wrong? Looking for one of end if. Oh, I didn't end the if statement. Okay, that was my mistake. So if you start an if you start a for, you have to have a block that ends it as well. So here I have to say, oops. And if. I don't know if I have to end the else, probably. And else? No. Okay, never mind. But I guess the else doesn't need.
The example has an end if after the else.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I missed that one. All right, let's see. There we go. Now we have two polls. It looped through, it just printed out the text of that poll. Pretty cool. So now if I go back and I make these a link, then I should be able to, when I click on this poll, it would route me to the page that that specific ID or a question ID. So it would, yeah, let me show you how we do that. So in here, I am going to comment this one out. Okay, so in this list element, I am going to create the A tag. So I want us to be rerouted. What was that? Okay, just so I don't forget. So the actual text that I want to display here is going to be the same text that I had here. So the question text itself. So I'm adding that inside the A tag. And then as an attribute, I'm going to send in an href. And this href will be my relative URL. So I don't have to include localhost or whatever my domain is. I just put the slash, and then I'm going to insert a question ID. So I'm going to add a variable in here. And the question ID is going to be part of the data that I sent in, so I can very easily access it. So I have question. So I'm just going to say question dot, or no, I think it's just dot ID. Let me check. Yeah, so it's just going to be question.id. And so when I click on this, it will reroute to the slash question ID for that question. And let's see if it works. So now this is a link. I click on this. We're looking at question 1. If I go back, click on this, we're at question 2. Pretty cool, right? Yeah. Okay. Questions now. No questions? That it is a lot. it's quite a bit, and until you get your hands on it, it'll be a little a lot.
Would you walk through that one more time?
Yeah. Let me answer a few questions and then we'll do it. Lewis, you had your hand up.
Yeah, my question was, can you go through it again as well?
Okay, we'll go through it again. Kenneth?
So the data that we're working with, I noticed that we're using the dot notation. Are we just treating that like a regular dictionary? That's how we're able to access the keys and the values?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just sending us an object of data, and then we can just go through it, kind of like the API data that we retrieve back. Yeah. Okay, so let's walk through this again. Let's see what happened. A bit of noise. Okay. So we started out by creating a template folder. So we have our templates folder, and then we created a folder specifically for our app. And within that, we added an index.html. So this is our first HTML page or HTML template. So we are planning on when the index gets chosen. So when we are at the index, when our URL, actually, let's go back one step. We start off with localhost /, right? So that goes into our project URLs. It goes to the base path, and then it says, okay, let's interpret it using the app URLs. So it goes into the app URLs. It finds that we're at the base path. It's going to call index. So in our views, our index has a bunch of data, and then it's going to call a template that we have written and send in that data. So here we have a list of questions that we have predefined, and we are going to send that in pretty much to this page. So when we want to render a page, this is the syntax. So we use this render method. We send in the request that we have received. We send in where this templates, where this HTML file lives within my templates folder. So it already recognizes templates. So all we have to do is specify that it's inside polls app / index.html. If I didn't have this intermediate folder, I would just put index.html here and I wouldn't have that part. Okay, and then the last thing that we're sending in is the data itself. So the way we're formatting this data is we are sending in a list of objects here. So list of dictionaries, and I'm going to assign this list a key called latest question list. And this will be important for us to know inside of our index, our HTML template. So when we request index, we will render our index.html and we will send in data. So now when we're in our index.html, it'll be interpreted obviously from the top to the bottom. So we have a header, and then we have an if statement saying that if we have something in our data that was sent in that's called latest question list. And you see here, I actually did name something latest question list. So it went there. Then we created a list out of each one because this is an array. So I was able to say for each question in this latest question list that I received, create a list item, right? So each list item is going to be a link. And when this link is clicked, it will reroute the person to the details page of this question. So if we looked at the URLs that we had defined one that had just a question ID, and this is going to be to view the details of a page. So we're pretty much just rerouting to this. And we're keeping it dynamic by being able to take in just any question ID and send in a question ID based on the question on that line. So, and then we're displaying just the question text. So when we look here, we see the question text displayed. When we click on it, it reroutes us to / whatever that question ID was. And then we have to end our for loop. And in the case that this is not there, then we will say no polls are available. So if I had changed the name of this, so if I said just this is what I'm naming it now, I shouldn't be able to loop through these because it won't recognize it. So we should be able to see our else. So let's refresh, and there we go. No polls are available. How is that walkthrough? Like, do you need more information? Good. Okay. Questions?
Can you explain just one more time 44? I understand the link going to index, but
Here?
just what? Yes, just that one line.
Okay. So this one is calling a render function that allows us to pretty much respond. So instead of just creating an HTTP response and telling it exactly what to send out, this method will put together a response that uses a template, like a file that we have created, and it's going to send in some sort of data. And I believe it just uses the request to be able to send the response correctly. So this method is basically from here, what it's doing is it's allowing us to render a page, and with this page we can send in data that we want rendered on that page. That is what this line is doing.
So you're always going to have requests, or could that be something different there?
No, it has
when
to
you're
be
using render.
Yeah, it has to be the request that was sent in.
Oh, I get you. Okay, I see it now. Thank you.
Other questions?
So if we didn't have that other polls app inside of templates, what would our path look like?
If we didn't have it here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it would just be index.html.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. So the context that it has, it knows that it's going to be inside a templates folder. It just looks within that templates folder for that. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, you said that the render knows to look inside the templates folder, but what if we name the template something else? Would it still know?
Let's see. Just going to rename this to template. And that still has that. I don't think I need to change anything. There we go. It's going to give you an issue because it doesn't know. It's looking for a templates folder. So it has to be named that exactly. Which is weird that it's not already created when we create our app. But that's it's another thing.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Other questions? No. Okay. Let's continue. Let's build out our.
I'm
oh,
sorry, real quick. The templates folder, when you created that templates folder, Django, it's like a function of Django. So when you create that, it already populates it with all that stuff, right? The init,
Unfortunately,
admin
no.
apps.
No, I had to create. So the templates folder I created myself. I created a folder with the same name as the app, which is also one of their conventions. And then I added an index.html inside that. But even if you don't have this polls app folder, it'll work fine. It won't be an issue.
Right. But when you created that templates folder in there, all the stuff that's inside it was already created, except for the index.
No. So this templates folder only has another folder called polls app. And then within that is an index. So
Okay,
these all were created. So I can just, I was going to delete the entire thing, but I don't want to redo my index. But yeah.
I think
so
Zach thinks that the files, the PI file, the PY files are inside template. They are not.
Oh, these ones? Yeah, these are not inside the template. These
Oh
ones,
yeah, I see it now. Yeah, the
Yeah.
little drop down line. Okay.
yeah, these ones are inside of the polls app.
Can you show your URLs file real quick?
I know some people are mentioning using like CSS and JavaScript. I will show you guys how to do that in a bit. What else? Okay. So now that we have our index working and populating, let's work on our detail page, since that is our next page that we end up going to. What happened? Did I change? Templates. I think I might need to just restart my server. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's say we want to update our detail page, because now if we click on it, it's just saying like you're looking at question 1. Doesn't give us a lot of information. We want more. So let's say that we're going to grab the question that we want to send information about. So this question is going to equal whatever question we want from here. So we can access it by latest question list, and then we can access the index. So the index is going to be our question ID -1, because our IDs start at 1 and then the indices start at 0. So we're just going to use question ID to be able to access this. So question ID -1, we are going to build our data that we were going to return. So we're just going to say, I'm just going to call this one question. So the key is question. I'm going to be actually sending in the question itself that I grabbed. And then instead of just returning an HTTP response, I'm going to do a render. I'm going to send in the request. Oops. My request. I'm going to access a template called within the polls app, and it's going to be called details.html. And then my third parameter, I'm just going to be sending in the data that I just put together. Okay. So this is set up. Now I need to create another template. So within this, I'm going to say this is called details.html. There we go. So here let's just say which one. Details about question, and then I'm just going to grab the question ID. So we have access to question, right? We have sent in the question, so we can access it by using the key, the name, dot whatever information that's inside of it. So I'm just going to use question.id here. And that's my tag. And I can create one. And then I'm going to display the question text. Okay. So what else? What other information are we grabbing? We're grabbing the ID, we're grabbing a text. Maybe let's say we don't care about the publication date right now, but we do care about the choices. So let's loop through the choices and create a list. So I'm going to create an unordered list. Can someone tell me why we create this list tag outside of the for loop?
Because if we don't, for every iteration, it'll just create another unordered list.
Exactly. So we only want to create the list, like the unordered list once, but for each element, we want to create a list item. That is where we do this. So we're going to say for choice in question.choices, we are going to create a list item. And inside of this list item, we are going to we're going to display the choice text. So choice.choice. Yeah, just choice text. Underscore text. List item. And then I need to end my for loop. There we go. And this should be it. I think this looks good. It's just displaying the question information, the details. So I'm getting an error here.
I think your syntax doesn't match. I think it's choices with an S in the other file.
This one, question.choices.
Never mind, maybe that was my mistake.
No module named pie parsing. This is in my views, so that's where my issue is. Oh, I think that got like auto completed and it tried installing something that it didn't know what to do with. Okay, so let's go back to our main page. We have our poll. Now we click and we get details about question 1. The question like text is what's up, and our options are not much and the sky. Okay, any questions on this? This was pretty much the same thing we did earlier. No, okay. So let's go back to here, to our details page, and let's create a form. So we want to be able to vote on these polls. So a form will probably be our best.
Zeno,
Uh-huh.
really quick, how did you define the detail?
Which detail? Like the
definition of detail in the views. So on mine like 40 something. Yeah, there.
this one. Yeah, it just takes in a question ID.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Uh-huh. Okay. So let's do some things here. So instead of a list, I'm actually going to create a form that will allow us to vote for whatever option we want. So I'm going to start this by saying form, my action. So this action is going to basically create a new HTTP request. Yeah, I'll just show this one and then we'll take a little break and then ask some more questions. And yeah, if anyone is not able to follow along, just watch here and then we'll yeah, we'll figure out issues later. Okay, so we want to say, so for here, our action is going to be a request. So when we submit our form, we're gonna make a new request to our backend. So our URL is going to be our vote URL that we created. So this one, when we submit it, we want it to be rerouted there. And well, actually, yeah, we'll see how this works. So it's going to be at question ID, question.id, because we have access to that here. So question ID / vote. And we are going to set the method. Action is an HTML method. Yeah. So then we're going to set our method to post because we are creating new information or we're sending in information. We're going to choose a post method. And I'll close up the form down here so I don't forget. Okay. So within this form, there are a few things that we're going to add. So I think, so there's something called CSRF token, CSRF. CSRF. I forgot what it stands for exactly, but it allows us to make these requests pretty much from our page. We will go more into detail on that later, but just know that if we're doing this stuff, we just have to include the CSRF token. It's not T, it's an F actually. Okay. So now we're gonna pretty much do the same thing. We're gonna loop through our choices. But instead of creating a list item, I'm going to create an input. Okay. And this input will, actually, the input is a little different because it doesn't need a closing tag. So we will just build it out here. So our input, our type is going to equal to radio. So if you guys know radio buttons, it's just like the circles that you can click on to select things. So I'm going to create a radio type input. I'm going to name it choice. I'm going to give it an ID. And this ID, I'm just going to call choice with the number, with the ID or like the index pretty much. So within a for loop, we have access to something called a for loop counter. For loop.counter, and this will give us the ID for whatever choice it is. So if it's the first one, it's going to be the first one, and so on. And then our value for this is going to be equal to our choice ID. So this is just, again, for the radio, and then we're going to put a label for it right under. So it will make a little more sense in a bit. So in here, I'm just going to put choice.id. Okay. So we have our input. And now I'm going to create the label. This label is going to be for, I have to give it the ID pretty much. So this will bind this label to the input. So I have to put the same ID as the input ID here. And then I'm going to close this. Choice text, and then / label, close it out. And yeah, that's it. I'll add a break also just for okay. We're ending the for loop, which is good. And then our last thing is to add a submit button. So I'm going to create an input. Type equals submit. And our value is going to equal to both. I got everything here. So we don't get weird behavior, I'm going to comment this one out. This was what we had before. Okay. And let's save it. Save it, test it out. So now if we go to or refresh our details page, let's see what comes up. Cool. So now our choices changed a little bit. We have a radio, and then we have a vote button. So let's inspect these elements real quick. So we have in here, this is a form with an action. We have a few different inputs. Yeah, so this was our CSRF token here. Oops, did not want to close that one. I just wanted to move this over. Doesn't matter. Okay. So yeah, we have our information. When we submit, we should be able to see a network request. So right now, this was our only one. It came from our first page, and it put one together where we got to this page. And then if we click on this, then I get a vote. There was a server error because we're not handling something correctly. Yeah, so we are doing a post method, but we're not actually accessing. Oh, okay. So it says you call this URL via post, but the URL doesn't end with a slash. So that means in here, where's my vote? My action. Okay. So I have to end it with a slash. Let's see what this does. If I go back to the details page, I vote on this, and there we go. It rerouted properly. We're not actually handling anything to do any of the voting, but we were able to reroute to the other page. So basically what this action thing does is it will create a new request that will go to this URL. And this URL is going to be the question ID /vote, which then gets interpreted by the URLs.py, goes into the view, and goes into the vote method that is handling it. Right now, we're not doing anything with the fact that it's a post request. We're not grabbing any of the information. We're not saving anything. We're just sending this out. But yeah, questions? I know this is a lot. Today's a very heavy day. No questions. Yeah, Chris.
Just a quick one. So for on line 9 of your details HTML, and if you got for loop.counter, I'm guessing there's other methods and things that are organic to the Django for loops, things like that. Is there like do you have a quick reference for those? I haven't Googled anything, but I don't know if there's like a good
Yeah,
source.
let me see. Django template methods, maybe. Their documentation is pretty good. It is pretty extensive. There's a lot, but maybe components? No. Yeah, I'll look this up. And I don't have one like off the top of my head right now. For the I don't know, just yeah, there's a lot of built-in stuff that we're not even gonna touch on. So this is a good.
Okay, so yeah, template built-ins, I see those. Okay, yeah, that's a lot of good stuff. Thanks.
I'm just gonna put it in the chat real quick. Okay, there we go. Ben.
When we're writing the Python and the HTML, does it have to be indented like in Python or no? Or is it just good practice to do that?
Yeah, this is just good practice. Just so you can keep track of how, like, what is closing what, or yeah. It's just to keep track of things.
Also, what is a CRF token?
So here, I'll pull up some documentation on that. So CSRF token. This is it's called cross-site request forgery protection. It's like what was the other one that I mentioned when we were working with the APIs? The cores, the cross-origin resource sharing. It's basically something that protects you against cross-site forgery, which I think, I don't know, it has some sort of like protection for when you're making requests and responses. I need to look more into it and to be able to give you like a proper rundown of it. But this site is pretty. Oh, I saw Jason. You put the same link. Thank you. but yeah, we will talk more about this later on. So this isn't in a lecture afterwards, but just know we have to usually put it in there into the template where we want to make like post requests and just requests from within our template. Yeah, I think it allows us to, yeah, I'll read this later.
It
Okay.
mentioned here that it's a cookie, apparently.
Cookies, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it just, when you insert it, it allows the browser to know that this is you, and you're allowed to make these requests. But I could be wrong.
So you need that token every time you want to create like a form action?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have it in here, you'll get an error and you'll know that you need to put something in there. So if I go back to the detail for one, I try to vote, it's going to say the Caesar verification failed. So you just pretty much need it there. So it can verify that this request is allowed.
Can you explain radio one more time?
So radio, it's just a type of input. So we have HTML input. So there's all these different types. And the input is usually used in a form. So you can have an input that's a button, checkbox, color, so all of these things. And a radio is just, let me just refresh this real quick. A radio is just this. It's a clickable button that allows you to select something.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Questions? Let's take a quick break and then come back, let it settle in a little bit, and then we'll handle actually doing the voting and viewing the results.
Zainab, can I break out with you for a few minutes to figure out what's up with my system here?
Definitely, yeah. Okay. So before the break, we set up our voting mechanism. So we're able to get to the details page of the question and then select an option or choice and hit vote, and it will reroute us to our vote method over here in the views. Okay, so I'm going to close out these two so there's less noise. Okay, so now we want to handle our vote request. Let's see how we can do that. So our question that we're going to grab is going to be based off of the question ID again. So I'm just going to grab the question information from here. Didn't want to remove that. Okay. So we're grabbing our question that was just voted on based on the ID. We're going to access the selected choice. So selected choice equals question. Actually, okay, let's get something before we do that. So we made a post request and we have in our template, we defined that when we want to make a choice, we have our ID attached to. So when it makes when it chooses this input, so if we, sorry, let me show you. It's a little hard to not see it visually. So when I choose this one, what will be sent in is our choice ID. Why is that? So we clicked on this, the label and the input are attached, and they're both attached through this ID, right? But when I actually send in, when I send in the information, or what the information that gets sent in is just the value of what I had chosen. So when we put our radio input, the value is what gets taken and sent back with our post method. So this is all handled within the form, and it's a little confusing. The form has a lot of functionality built in. So yeah, so the most important information that you need to know is when we hit submit, what we have access to is going to be our value that we set. And here it's going to be our choice ID. So to access our choice ID, we can do it by grabbing our request. So the request that was sent in dot post. So request has a few methods or a few attributes. One of them is post, one of them is get, and this just has more information around the request itself. So inside of post, I'm going to get something back called choice. And the reason for that is that we had named this choice. So whatever I named this here will reflect back to how I can access that information from the request. So here I'm just going to access it by the name. And what this will return is going to be the value. So it's name and value. It's going to return my choice ID. So if I print this out, let's just do some debugging actually, or yeah, we're not, there's no bug, we're not debugging, but we are gonna try to see what we get from this. So our console can still run, we just have to trigger the vote to happen. Let me save it again in case. So to trigger it, I'm just gonna choose this. I'm gonna vote. I'm voting on question 1. That means it executed. I should see my output here, which I do. So request at post at choice, or request.post at choice is going to give me that choice ID, which is 1. I do believe that the type is going to be a string, so we might need to just handle that. What am I doing here wrong? Okay. So I'll save. Oops. Yeah, you can't just call it like that. So you have to go back to the vote and then trigger it that way. Yeah, so the choice that we grabbed from here is going to be a string. So all I have to do is cast it as an integer, so I can use it. So I can use it to access the choice from the actual questions list that we have. So here we're doing this stuff because we're holding our data in a list. We're usually going to hold it in a database. So there will be a few other things that we can do, but this is going to be the same. So accessing the information sent in by a post request is going to be this way. Okay, so this is going to be our choice ID that was selected. Then now we can grab our selected choice. So selected choice is going to be our question that we had grabbed. So our question is this, right? So this is our question, and then we have to access choices, and then we have to grab it by the ID. So question at choices, and then at whichever index that we have. The index is going to be based off of the choice ID -1, similar to what we did here because it's in order. It just starts from 1 versus 0. So we're gonna say choice ID -1. Okay, and this should pull out my selected choice. And I can just actually print out my selected choice real quick. Okay, save. Okay, I voted. So now the choice that I selected was the sky, which was what I voted on. Oh, it went away, but yeah, that was what I voted on earlier, which is correct. And so now, in here, to make sure I show that there is a vote, I have to increment the votes down here. So we have access to our selected choice, which is the one that we want to increase the vote on. And then we say selected choice at votes plus equals 1. And so we have incremented this. And now what we have to do, so I don't want to show anything on the vote page. So this vote method is pretty much just going to be like an API method, where you're not actually going to a page, but you're calling it to do something, and then it can just send, like, do whatever it needs to do, and we don't have to actually send it back to or we don't have to render a page that's called votes. We can actually redirect it to a different page. So what we can do instead of this HTTP response, we can have an HTTP response redirect. Okay, so what this will do is it will actually redirect us to a different route. So after we voted, we want to probably go to the results, right? So HTTP response redirect, and then I can send in the name of, or the URL that I want to redirect to. So this will redirect to, let's look at our URLs real quick. We want to redirect to the results one. So we're going to have to append the question ID, and then we're going to have to add /results to go to that specifically. So this is just going to be /question ID /results. Okay, this looks right. So we pretty much do this if we don't want to render a specific page for this vote, because we're not going to create a vote page. I don't want to. I just want to redirect it to this results page that will print out all of the results for me. So if I save this and I go back here, let's go back to the beginning. I'm going to choose my second one. I'm going to say my response is the sky, and then it redirected us to our results page. So you see here, it was vote, and then it went to the results. And here it printed out the correct thing earlier. It should have an incremented vote. So yeah, we were able to redirect it to this page. And now from here, we can just view what was actually sent to us. So we can also grab the question again based on the ID that we had pulled in from the URL parameter. And then we can render a new page, which is called a results page. We haven't created it yet, but we'll create it in a sec. So again, this is request. We will specify where our template is, /results.html. And then we're going to send in our question information. So instead of creating the data thing, I'm just gonna I'm gonna send in question with the key question and then the question data itself. Okay. So we've created that. Now in our templates, I'm going to create another file. Oops, didn't want to do that. Okay. So in here, I'm going to create a results.html. Okay. And in here, let's say these are results. Oops. Results of question, and then we have access to something called questions in here, or question in this file. So we can say question.id. And then we can put the question text again. Oops. Okay. Yeah, the syntax takes a bit of time to get used to. So it's question.question underscore text. Okay. On page 2. And then I'm going to make an unordered list. Actually, I can just copy this over here. So creating an unordered list, and then we're going to loop for each choice in the question.choices, the question that we had. And then we're going to create a list item that includes the choice text, so what that choice was, and then how many votes it had. So this is the number of vote. So Django has this cool thing where it can pluralize things based on the votes. So this is the syntax. So you can say this is the number that you want, and if it's more than one, then it will pluralize it. So it will add an S to the end of the votes. I think, yeah, when it pluralizes, I think it only returns an S, so it doesn't work for all words, but sometimes it's useful. Okay, so this will create a list of all the votes. And then we can just add an anchor tag that allows us to take the person back to the detail page to vote again if they'd like. So I can just create a, so this would be a question ID. Question.id, like that. And it's going to be /detail. Okay, this looks correct. I'm going to close first tag, call it vote again. And okay. So let's see if this works. I'm going to start again from the beginning. I'm going to pick a question. I'm going to go to the details page for that question. I'm going to select my choice. When I click on this button, it will make an HTTP request, specifically a post request to my backend, to my views, that will go into vote, because that's what I defined, right? So I have my vote here. It will go into the vote function. I am going to grab the data that I need, append or increment the votes on the actual data that I have, because the data is up here. I just had to grab the relative data that I need. So I had to grab the question, and within that question, I grabbed my selected choice. So here, And that's how I can increment the votes. And then I redirect to a results page, which then shows me the results of my questions votes. So if I vote here, I get rerouted to a results page, result for question 1. This response has 1 vote, or this choice has 1 vote, this choice has 0. Let's try to vote again. Oh, I named it detail instead of details. So I go back to here, details, save that. I'm gonna go back 1. Okay, so vote again. I didn't refresh the page, so it's not gonna take properly. So I'm gonna vote on this. So now each one has 1 vote. If I vote again, what did I do? Oh, I didn't put, so I actually don't need to put this here because I didn't have anything that has /detail. So the detail one is this one. Yeah, that's my mistake. So if I go back here, I just have the question ID. This will show me the question ID details. So let's start it again. Okay, click on this. Now we have 2 votes. If I vote again, I can vote it again. It should be 3. Yep, and I can do this as much as I want. Questions? Lewis, yeah.
Yeah, I got a question. So since you're saving the data in the page, like if you were to close out the page and go back to it, will the results will be still 3, 2, or will it reset back to 0?
Let's test it out. Okay, it's still there if you refresh the page, but if you go, so even if I start from the beginning, oh, this is the second. Let me go to question 1 real quick. Oops. So question 1, it's still holding on to the information because the server has been running since we began. But if we restart the server, all of our data gets reset back to 0. So here, if I do this, and then I run the server, I go back here, I look at the results. Results are 0 for this one. And it's going to be the same for the second one.
So
yeah.
for like, if we wanted to keep the data forever, like even if we like, even if you restart the server, how will we go on doing that?
So that's where databases come in.
Oh, that's how. Okay, I get
Yeah.
it now.
So when you hold your information in a database, it'll just stay there until you change it. Yeah. Sebastian.
Yeah, that was just my question. I just wanted to know like where that data gets stored before you refresh the server. Is that like cookies or is that on your end server?
No, it's stored inside the program itself. Because it's running, we started off with an initial list, but because we're doing the vote thing, we are kind of changing what it is or what is being held in this list pretty much. So this is like a global list for our project, and whenever we call any of these, it has access to the latest question list, but it's going to be updated based on what had happened right before.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ben.
Can I see the results page over there by pluralize real fast?
This one? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It just says what, and what does the pluralize do?
Pluralize adds an S to whatever, like it just, if it should pluralize, it will return an S and it will be appended here. So if I had 0 vote, oh, well, so let's say there's 1 vote. So it goes to 1 vote. If I have 2 votes, it'll change to 2 votes. So it's basically seeing based on the number of the votes, should I return an S or not. So 0 is usually votes, and then 1 is vote. Yeah, it's a fun functionality. Lewis.
Yeah, I think I remember you telling me something about this, but so if you're gonna work on the apps, on the applications, like you had to use Python, right, not JavaScript?
For here, it's Python. Django is built off of Python pretty much. There are there's like Next.js, which is a server based, like it's a framework that allows you to code in JavaScript pretty much. So
Okay,
yeah. So for here we're
yeah.
gonna use Python, but I'll show you guys how to add JavaScript folders to do stuff with your HTML. And that'll be our last thing before we end today. Ben? Or was your hand still up from before? Okay. All right. Today's a lot, but the more you practice, the more it'll come together. So someone mentioned about CSS files and how you can use CSS files within your templates and stuff like that. So to do that, we have to basically create a static file or a static folder, sorry, which will hold our CSS and our JavaScript later on. So yes, more configurations. Okay, so we add this folder to our on the same level as our app and stuff like that. So inside of our first directory, our first polls project folder, I'm going to create a folder called static. And in here, I'm going to create a file, or I'll actually create a folder called CSS, so I can hold all of my CSS folders together. And then inside CSS, I'm going to call or create main.css. Okay, so to tell Django that we have a static folder that we need to grab information from, we now go to, let me see actually. Yeah, okay, so the static folder has to live next to the manage.py. So we're on the right track. So now we go into our settings. We can scroll down. You can actually put this anywhere, but I want to see what we have already. Okay, so we have a static URL here that will tell us that this is this is what a static, where our static files will live. But now we have to say that we have a directory that has our static files. So we will add this piece in here. So static files dirs, which is directories. And then this is what we are going to be adding. So base directory, which is predefined up here, is just the path to our project pretty much. So it's our base directory, slash static. So base directory, static, and our folders are going to be in here. Okay, so this step is done. Okay. And now we can, let's go to, I'm lost a little bit. Okay. Templates. So in our templates, I have an index.html one, so we'll just have, actually, yeah, I don't know what to call this one. There's probably a better convention for this, but I'm going to call this no HTML template. This is not the correct naming convention probably, so I will correct myself once I learn it. But basically you can set, so here I'm just going to create the base HTML information. So HTML, I'm going to start a head. I should probably close. Head, I can call my site with, give it a title. And then here's where I can link like Bootstrap or wherever the CSS files that I want. So I can, so this is the CDN for Bootstrap, and this is going to be my style sheet that I created in here. So the way we can reference it is /static, because we set it in the settings, it already knows where static is. So /static /CSS and then /main.css. So whatever we put in there can be accessed later on. So one more thing that we have to do is we have to there are probably many ways to do this. So there are ways of using templates within templates. So you can set your HTML headers up here. You can do all that setting up, and then you don't have to actually import that stuff for every single file. You can just put one line at the top saying that this is going to extend. Oh, this is what it's called. Okay. Instead of HTML, it's called layout. Layout.html. That's, I guess, the convention of how you usually do this. So if I go to my layout.html, in here I can put my header and my style sheets and stuff like that. And then I can create a body. Matching boxes. Okay. So here, I can do something called a block, a code block. So I'm going to say that this is my main layout for all of my HTML pages. I'm going to define a header and I'm going to define a body. So in the header, all of this information is going to be pretty much the same. I don't want it to change. In my body, I want to be able to, based on which page I'm in, to actually like insert content into here. So the way I can do this is I can create a block, and I'm going to just give it a name content. So this is my content block, and then I can just do the end block afterwards. End block. So basically, everything that is between this and this, if you define it in a different file, it will get injected into here. So let me show you an example of that. So we can use this with our, let's just start with our index.html. So to be able to utilize this, at the top, you're gonna extend pretty much that layout. So or you're going to say that this one extends the layout. So it's going to use your layout as your basic layout, and then it's going to put whatever you put in here, it'll inject it into that layout. So I'm going to say extends layout dot, I have to put it in string. Okay. Layout.html. Okay. And this allows me to then create a block content, or like, because I called it content here. So if I create a content block in my index, it'll put whatever is in here, it'll inject it into the other one. So if I put, if I call this block content, and then I want to include, let's say, all of this information, and then I'm going to put end block. Okay. So everything between my block content and end block will be inserted into the other file, and that will be displayed. So notice here, I didn't set anywhere that has a title for our app, but here I did. In the header, I put the title polls. So we should be able to see that when we go to our main dot, our index. So if I go here, oh, it must be the first tag in the template. Okay, so I accidentally put some comments up here, or I put them below the comments. So remove that. There we go. So now should work, hopefully. No, template does not exist. Layout.html, did I name it something different? No. Maybe I have to put polls app slash. There we go. Okay, so you notice now we have styles. It looks better. It's just using the basic Bootstrap styles now. And up here we have a title that's called polls. So we were able to pretty much inject this code that was created into our layout. And we can do the exact same for our next pages. So like if I go to my details one, it's not gonna be, yeah, it's gonna have the old format of what it used to look like. And if I do the same for that, so I'm just gonna copy over the extends part. So I'm gonna extend, and then I need the block content, and then end block. Just gonna that. Okay, so now if I refresh this, I see that the styles were updated. So yeah, this is pretty cool. There's quite a bit to do with the templates. There is also an include, which lets you include a file within. So instead of injecting an entire block into a layout, you can have a separate file that only contains like one element, and then you can reuse that element within other places in your code. So if I have, let me create, let's say, this is called subscribe.html. And in this file, I'm only going to contain one button that like allows some person to subscribe. Right now, the button just sends an alert saying thanks for subscribing. So I can actually inject this wherever I want in the code. So I can say, let's say on my index file, I would like to have that button towards the bottom. So after my end if, I'm gonna put a new div for now. Div, and then inside of this div, I will include, so the same syntax of the blocks, so code block. I'm going to just put include, and I'm going to give the name of this. So it's going to be polls app / subscribe .html. So okay, and this should inject that button into my index. So if I go back here, now we have a button here that was injected. So yeah, those are the two things that you can do with these templates, or the two extra things. You can, I'll reiterate, you can create a layout, so you can set up your main HTML page. You can have all your headers, and then leave space for body content. You can also have multiple of these. So if I wanted the title of the page to change, I can create one of these blocks called title. Okay. Oops. Okay, so we created polls, and then I can overwrite it here, I believe, if we do it. And yeah, we can. Okay. So we have our block content. We want to actually have another block that's for the title. So block title and polls, but okay. So on the initial one, it just said polls. Now I want it to say polls but different. And if I refresh, it says polls but different here. Or if I wanted to not have this in my index, but I wanted it in my details, so I can add it up here. Since it extends that layout, I would be able to pretty much put whatever I want in this block title, because again, we defined it up here. And so when I save this, if I am on my main page, I just see polls, but if I go to a detail page, it says polls but different. Okay, now we're done. Now we've reached the end of our demo. Questions?
Can I see the CSS file?
It's empty right now.
Oh, okay.
So the styles that you're seeing here are just the basic Bootstrap styles, because I had imported Bootstrap over here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mhm.
So what is the main difference? I'm reading, what's the difference between includes and extends?
So extends is when you have a specific page layout defined, and then you have these blocks defined, And so when you say that something else extends this, you can include like, so when I'm extending layout.html, that means I have access to this block content and this block title. So if I'd like to, I can inject my own code from in here into this. So as long as I define that this is a block, so I said my index.html extends my layout, and I'm defining a code block called content, which will match the code block called content over here. And whatever is inside of this will replace whatever's inside of this, which is nothing. So that is how extends work. For for include is when you have like a code snippet or a piece of code that you want to reuse. So let's say I want the subscribe button to show on two different pages, but not everything. So I wouldn't have it in my layout because that would be on every single page. For the button, I can just define it here once in my subscribe.html, and then I can go into wherever I want to insert it. And all I have to say is include this file, and it'll dump whatever's in there into this place here. Yeah, so this allows you to reuse code snippet. I mean, both of them are reusing, but include is for injecting pieces of code into wherever you have your include part. Extends is the opposite. It takes whatever is in this file where you have the extends, and it inserts it into that file that you had predefined. So it's just opposite functionality. Other questions?